And now is Talkin Indie with Sandy Marie.
Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to Talking Indie. Today we're talking Pitch Black with Harry Cooper, the game director, and Connor, the creative director. How are you guys doing?
Yeah, really good, thank you.
Yeah, great, thank you. How are you?
I am awesome for this time of morning. I've got coffee in me. I'm good to go.
Good stuff.
Yeah,
Good
ready,
stuff.
ready.
I think so far this time zone change is working. 9 a.m. in the morning works better than midnight. So
Yeah.
I used to do
definitely.
this show at midnight my time. So
Really,
Oh,
I'm
wow.
so tired by.
yeah, I used to be completely out of it by the end of it. Okay, we'll get started in the first question. How did you guys get started with game development? Not necessarily with Pitch Black, but like in general.
Well, as regards starting game development, this is actually our first project as game developers. We've always been sort of big fans of games and big fans of creative projects generally. We've done a lot of different projects in the past, but as regards actual game dev, this is our first venture, and the reason we got into it was to create this audio game because we felt there was a lot of areas within the sort of genre of audio game that hadn't been fully explored. And so because of an ambition to do that, that's what inspired us to start making this.
And you guys are part of a team of three.
Yep.
Harry, you're the game director, I believe. Can you tell us what your role was in this?
Sure, yeah. So I suppose the very initial idea was one that I had, and then very early on in the project, both Connor and Jordan, who's the other guy, came on board, and I sort of do the Unity development, the coding, and a bit of the sound design. Your main role?
Yeah, so I'm the narrative director. So what basically, Harry and I have been mates from the uni course that we were doing. And I basically said, listen, I have a prior degree as well, which is in creative writing and English literature. So I did a lot of script writing. And we're both, musicians. We're both very into sound stuff. So, we can both cover a lot of the sound related stuff. But I said, if you need someone to kind of write this, pretty storyline to wrap it all in. I can write scripts for you, editing dialogue, directing dialogue, which I'd done all before. So it kind of just, all of our expertise, and Jordan's the chief of marketing as well, and he's very clued up with digital marketing and promotion. So it kind of just happened. It kind of came to be, and or happened to be that we were all we could all contribute something that's our kind of main skill areas.
Yeah, you all had a specific strength to contribute into it.
Yeah, very
Absolutely.
much so. Yeah.
Like, do you think that would work? I'm trying to ad lib here. Do you think working in the team of three has benefited you to do more than what doing it on your own would have been?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I suppose primarily because whilst we all have a similar sort of common ground in sound design, I've never written a script. I'm also not particularly good at marketing. Jordan is very good at sound design and very good at marketing. Connor's a kind of experienced script writer, and my sort of specialism is in the spatial aspect of spatial audio. I'm very into ambisonic and binaural sound. So without those sort of skill sets combining, it would have been quite difficult to finish the game.
For sure.
At least to the scope that we're trying to achieve with this now.
Okay, where are we? So you said Jordan was he? So he was the head of marketing. So he was all about the promotion of the game and the marketing side of it. That was his role, was it?
Yeah,
For sure. I mean, a lot of this obviously revolves around digital marketing, as a lot of creative projects in kind of the modern era, do. You need to be able to market your product, whatever it is, to the best of your ability, knowing different, sides that to engage in the community, whatever community that is that you're targeting. Digital marketing is hugely important. It's all well and good having this interesting idea. It could be an amazing idea, but not being able to market it, no one hearing about it, well, then that amazing idea kind of is redundant because it can't turn into anything else. So yeah, marketing is essential.
Yeah, and it also, again, it would be remiss of us not to say he also does the majority of the sound design for the game presently. So
Yeah.
So a lot of the sound assets that are currently in the city level are due to his work, and also he's very with video editing, so he's done a lot of the video editing for most of our material. So yeah, as he's not here, we're gonna make sure we represent.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Got to make sure he gets the credit he deserves.
Yeah,
Absolutely,
exactly.
Okay, give us for those of us who have no idea what pitch black is, how would you describe it to someone?
Yeah, so I think Pitch Black would be, it's an audio adventure game, and what we're able to do, because the length and the depth and the richness in terms of features and how expansive the game is going to be, we're able to call it the AAA of the audio game industry, which is 100% what it is. Audio games that have come before have been really cool, but we feel that they've just not been expansive enough, and that they haven't expanded on, well, possibility more than anything.
Yeah, and to further that point, a lot of what currently exists in the audio game market is sort of a translation of a game that's based on visual cues. So you get audio RPGs like A Hero's Call, and Manaman. You get audio FPSs like Audio Doom and Audio Quake. But what they are really are taking visual based mechanics and trying to translate them into the audio realm. What we really wanted to do with this is take audio as its own premise. What can you do with hearing that you can't do with vision? And base all of the audio mechanics off of that. So that's sort of where we differ. It's a change of emphasis from trying to make a regular type of game accessible to trying to create a game that is from the ground up audio only.
This is me ad-libbing again. Why an audio game as opposed to, like, what made you decide to do an audio game as opposed to like one that wasn't an audio game?
Yeah, just because one, we all love audio. We're all musicians. We're all sound designers. That's really our passion. We're not visual artists or animators or any of that. And secondly, it's it, because the niche, whilst there have been some very prominent titles, it feels so underexplored from a gameplay mechanic perspective and from a level design perspective that there's so much room for growth there, in a way that perhaps, whilst you're always going to get innovative indie games and AAA games, that so much ground has been covered already. So it's really an area that you can develop in and innovate within without there being such a massive content that's gone before you that you're trying to sort of battle against.
Yeah, totally get you there. With this, in terms of storyline, like obviously spoiler free. What can you tell us about the story of Pitch Black?
So essentially, I think the most important thing in terms of painting the picture of the world, it's a post-apocalyptic world. It's set in one of the last remaining cities. It is a huge city. It's built up of districts, ranging from, well, District 5 to District 1, from poorest to wealthiest. And there's also a heavy theme of religion in the game. That is a huge part of it. Religious control, and then you have corporate control as well. Very prominent themes that you find within the kind of the post-apocalyptic range, if you will. But as far as the storyline itself, you take on the role of someone that is trying to uncover secrets,
An infiltrator.
an infiltrator, a spy, that is trying to uncover secrets about the powers that be, to topple the powers, and kind of throw the power into someone else's hands. So it's within the city and actually outside of the city. you'll find this really interesting relationship between different factions, different levels of, following religion or being a little bit outlandish. You're going against, the city powers. So there's a lot of prominent themes of religion, corporate power, outlandish rebellion, and it's really fun. So you're going to be navigating through this rich city in very interesting ways, and we have lots of different levels in there that contrast heavily with the last that's gone before it. So yeah, that's what you can expect from the story, and lots of rich character detail as well. Really fun characters, very well, interestingly constructed, and immersive world. So
Okay, so what can we expect in terms of gameplay? Are we talking mostly a linear experience where you walk through and you just experience the story, or from an audio perspective, or are we trying to navigate ourselves through blinds and is there other things to explore?
So the storyline itself is linear, but the levels are designed in such a way that exploration is rewarded through story, through discovering aspects of the world that you wouldn't have otherwise. And so replayability was something that we really wanted to get a lot in, despite having a linear storyline. And the way in which we've done that is using some procedural generation techniques to randomize placement of certain audio sources. So every time you load in the city, for example, you're going to get a different lot of market sellers. You're going to get a different conversation. When it comes to the puzzling aspects of the gameplay, you're going to have slightly different puzzles to solve each time. And secondly, even though the storyline is linear, we've put in 3 different versions of each of the main characters, and so there are going to be 3 game playthroughs that are each subtly different in the sort of emphasis of each character trait, and we've got each of those fully voice acted as well. So there's numerous reasons to replay the game.
Yeah.
Other than just for the fun of it.
For sure. And I think, again, another point to stress is that the story is kind of the framework, the glue for the exploration of the various soundscapes that we're going to present to you. So it's going to be cool.
Yeah, it sounds really cool. I do particularly like that the way you've described it definitely does sound like there's a lot of replayability in it, which is important to a lot of people when it comes to story-based games. You get a lot of them where you play through the game and it's the same each time you play it. There's no real replayability to it. Okay, is the game designed for just the blind and visually impaired community, or is it just as easy and just as fun for someone who is sighted like myself to play it?
So the game is, of course, entirely accessible to the blind and visually impaired community because it is audio only. But that isn't to say that it is only for them. Anybody with ears can play it, or with 2 ears can play the game, and it's supposed to be a unique experience in indie gaming as well as being accessible. It's more about being inclusive than it is exclusive to a single community of people.
Yeah, we wanted to stress the point that it is very much playable by the wider community as well. We didn't want to, as Harry said, make it exclusive to one demographic. What we're hoping to do, as well as being able to provide an accessible experience, an inclusive experience, is be able to provide a fresh new twist, a fresh new spin on current indie games that are out there now. So we're stressing that sight offers no advantage here, and that in fact, when removing sight from the game, sound presents a very different experience, and that is attractive and appealing in itself.
Yeah, and to kind of back that up, if you think about the popularity of audiobooks via Audible, you don't need vision to create a compelling story or an immersive experience. And in fact, using your imagination to recreate the visual aspect of the world around you, as opposed to being handed on a plate, can be a lot more powerful. In the same way that when you read a book, that tends to stick with you more, perhaps, than when you watch a film, because you're using a lot of your own imagination, and that intrinsically makes you more invested in the characters, and internally makes you um, interact in a way that's a lot more visceral than if you're just playing a visual game. So not only is it accessible, it also, I feel, perhaps a more intense and more engaged experience than you might get from other games. You can't be lazy with this game. You have to embrace and become immersed in it, because if you don't, you won't be able to get through the levels.
Sure, I'll figure that out for myself after this interview, because I have the demo downloaded and I do intend to play it on stream after this
Good.
interview.
Excellent. We'll be watching.
Okay, I'm going to link this first, but you've got a Kickstarter going at the moment. What goals have you got
absolutely.
for the Kickstarter at the moment, and how is the Kickstarter tracking overall?
Well, we hit our minimum funding goal, £4,000. We did that a week or so ago, which
Yeah.
was under halfway through. Our first stretch goal is at £6,000. At the moment, we're at 4,342, I think,
More.
off my head.
More.
Perhaps more.
Yeah, I think so. It's about £100 more. I think it's 4,435, I believe, actually.
Ah, okay.
I think so. Yeah.
Great. Cool. So yeah, so it's going really well. The community, particularly the blind visually impaired community, but also indie gamers in general, have been massively supportive of it, and we're incredibly grateful for all the great feedback we've got. It's
Yeah,
been wonderful,
incredible.
actually.
Yeah, it's been really good.
But yeah, so it's going really well. We're really pushing to try and hit that £6,000, and if we do that, you get cross-platform transferable saves. So it means that when you're playing on your computer, on PC or Mac or Linux, you can then save the game, and you'll get given a code, and you can put that into your phone, and then carry on while you're on the move, because the game is both for desktop and mobile.
What type of tiers do you have? Like, what can people expect as like perks? I'm going to call them perks for supporting Pitch Black.
So the sort of basic tier, if you want, the lowest tier is £17, and for that you get a copy of both the game and both the game on desktop and on mobile. At £21, you get original soundtrack as well, which we're composing and recording, because we have access to a very high quality recording studio and we're all musicians.
Yep.
£30, you get a binaural audiobook, which is sort of a perfect playthrough of the game, fully voice acted, and that lasts over an hour. And we're hoping to make that available on Audible as well. £50, you get latest build access, which is throughout the development of the game, at all times you can access the latest build. So it's like becoming a bit of a member
Exclusive
of the team.
insight, yeah.
£100, you get some 3D audio masterclasses taught by ourselves. So we're all, if you want, qualified 3D audio composers and creators. So that will involve teaching ambisonic audio and binaural audio and how it works and how that fits into Unity. At £200, you get a creator's commentary version of the game, so you can play through, and we're going to commentate on the creative intent, on the gameplay intent, how the mechanic will worked out for this section of the game. And at £500, you get a custom game build, which is essentially you can choose a name of your choice, and the voice actors will record specific lines that are directed at the player. And so it's as if you're being spoken to directly by the voice actor. So it's like a bespoke build of the game that only exists for you. Yeah.
Well, they sound like pretty cool perks.
Yeah.
Okay, what have been the biggest hurdles that you've come across since starting Pitch Black, and how did you overcome them?
From a design perspective, there hasn't really been an audio game like this before. I know that's a big statement as it's
Mhm.
2019, but genuinely, the mechanics we're using in this haven't been done in this way. And that's based on lots of research, talking to lots of blind and visually impaired players. There have been bits of each one in certain audio games, but it really is quite unique. So trying to formulate some sort of system to then design levels around this unique set of mechanics was quite difficult, because usually if you're making an FPS, there's been hundreds, thousands. So there's some precedents for what works, what doesn't. For this, it's really starting from scratch from a design perspective. And that was both thrilling and very very freeing from a design perspective, because we didn't have any of this baggage of like genre expectations, but also of course starting from scratch, so there's a lot of sort of pre-development before we could even start creating the levels and the mechanic.
Yeah, I mean, I think as well, as far as we talked a little bit about marketing before, I think as far as marketing something that is so, as we said, unique, new, fresh, it can be hard to convince people that this is the route that they should go down.
To convey how it actually
Of
plays as
course,
well.
of course, because it's all well and good speaking about it, and that's great, and and we enjoy it. But it's we feel that it's much more comfortable. For example, if we were to make a 2D side scroller, people are aware of what a 2D side scroller is, and they used the word precedence earlier. It has been set. They know that that's what experience they're going to get fundamentally. But for this, it's something new. It's something fresh. It's something that a lot of people haven't heard of before, and I think a lot of people can be apprehensive. And I mean, overcoming that is just by doing things like this, trying to get in contact with as many people as possible to explain what they're actually going to be experiencing, and what the game actually involves at its deepest.
Also, playing the demo, one thing that was really important for the Kickstarter was making sure people could actually play a very early version of what the game's going to be, just to get an idea of how a game like this actually functions. So watching a playthrough by Legally Sighted or yourself, if you're going to stream it, and playing the demo, I think is really key to sort of understanding the concept.
Yeah, exactly. Like in a way, doing something ambitious like this is, yeah, as you said, it's can be a I'm drawing a blank. I don't know the word I'm looking for. It can be a disadvantage, but some people could see it the other way and be, I've never heard of this being done before. I'm curious, and
Yeah, it
curiosity
has an
leads there.
appeal.
Yeah,
So
so
Sure.
it can work in both ways as well, which because I
Mhm.
know what drew me to this myself was that I hadn't heard of something like this before, so it was the curiosity that got me.
Yeah.
You spoke about binaural audio. I think I said that right.
Yeah.
That's the one.
And it obviously plays a huge role in all of the mechanics of Pitch Black. Can you explain what it is for those of us who have no clue what it is?
Sure. So what binaural is when you have stereo audio, which is two channels, left and right. What that can give you as regards panning or directionality is sort of a 180 plane in front of the listener. What binaural can give you is full 360 all around the head audio. So it's, if you want, you can call it 3D audio. And the way in which it works, very quickly, because I tend to ramble about this, is that your pinnae, which are the tops of your ears, like these bit here, and absorbance by your head, give the brain information about whether or not something's coming from above or below or behind you or in front of you. And so binaural recreates those cues to trick your brain into giving you directional 3D audio. So that's how it works, even though it's only got 2 channels.
So could you relate it to like wearing a VR headset only like
Yeah,
only for your ears, if that makes sense?
yeah, for sure. Yeah, so VR, actually binaural audio is becoming ever more popular. Because even though sound is often an underappreciated sort of art form within the gaming world, that not to say there aren't incredible sound designers in the game world, because there are, but a massive factor of immersion is having appropriate audio, because it can be really distracting if you're turning your head in VR and the sound doesn't correlate correctly to the way in which you're facing. So yeah, VR is probably the most common place that you'll find binaural audio at the moment, although it is becoming more common in the broader gaming world, particularly in competitive gaming, actually, because if you can hear someone walking from behind you, that's a massive cue.
Advantage.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I'm going to use Dead by Daylight as a example here, because obviously there's a lot of visual cues there. Like you're trying when you're playing the killer, you're trying to listen for the survivors. When you're the survivor, you're trying to listen for the killer. I think they've probably used a bit of binaural audio in that as well.
For sure.
Okay, where are we? Do you guys have a favorite character from the game?
So again, without too many spoilers, we've actually quite a few character trailers, which you can find on our Kickstarter page and our social, to kind of introduce the characters, well, the main characters that you'll be meeting along your journey. But I think so. We have a character called Archie. Archie is kind of this this stereotypical Cockney geezer.
Do you want
But
to do an accent?
no, I'm not going to do an accent. But you can watch
I
the
was
character trait.
tempted, but then my Cockney accent is awful.
Well, mine's not great either. So what Archie, we're kind of going for the panto ethos, which I really like, when sort of stereotypically male lead roles are actually played by females. Female actors. So Archie is by far the most interesting character as far as I guess preconceptions are concerned. I think going into meeting Archie, you'll have a lot of questions, and that's what we want. That will, of course, get answered. Hopefully, you can email me directly. But I think Archie's the most interesting. Again, I don't want to spoil too much, but we have some really cool and some great voice actors. I think that's something that we want to stress. Not only the characters are interesting, but a character, in my opinion, is only as interesting as not just the writing, but how they're actually portrayed voice actors. So we have some brilliant voice actors, and a big thank you to all the voice actors that have submitted for free. We've had over 80 voice actors, ranging from new guys just trying to build up a demo reel to established voice actors in shows like The Wire and games like GTA as well, who have just loved the premise that they've just donated dialogue for free, and it's brilliant. So,
absolutely, and you can actually, if you play the demo, which is a little bit of the city level, and wander through the various locations, you'll pass through market stalls, and you'll hear snippets of conversation. Very, very, very funny, and that's all contributed by voice actors who just love the idea, happy to contribute. We were very upfront, very small roles. We're a small company. We can't pay for all this, and they were very happy to be a part of it anyway.
Which
and that's incredible.
And we didn't expect that, actually. More to the point.
Well, as I said, it's an amazing premise. I'm not surprised so many people decided, I want to be involved in this.
Very much.
Okay, going back to characters again, where did you draw the inspiration from in terms of them? Like, are they based on, like, loosely based on people you might know, or
yes and no. I think it's impossible when four characters to, even if I were to say, which would be a lie, that they are completely original characters that have come, completely from my mind, and you will have never seen iterations of them before.
before.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. So you will have seen similarities in the characters that I've created with other characters, and what I wanted to do was build from quite popular kind of either comic book or video game characters. So, for example, Finn, who again, if you watch the character trailers, you'll see a monologue from Finn, who's acted by Alex Hill Knight, who's great voice actor,
incredible,
great
so
musician,
good.
pianist as well. He's brilliant. Check out his stuff. You'll find all links on our page. But Finn was kind of how I visualized Finn, and a lot of the characterization actually came from Nathan Drake from Uncharted. If you've ever played Uncharted before, or if
I
you've ever heard
haven't personally played Uncharted. I've watched other
Okay.
people play it, so
Yeah,
I
it's
do
a
know
great-
what
it's a
he
great
looks
game.
like.
For sure. And his behavior is kind of like, I mean, at the end of the day, he's this lethal killer, but his personality, at least at surface level, is kind of this cheeky wit, sometimes a little bit goofy, sometimes a little bit, cracks a bad joke here and there. So yeah, I mean, that's Finn's kind of the main guy, the main protagonist, if you will, bar the player. I know. So then we have characters like the director, who I imagine who's voiced by Mr. Matt Watford.
The legend.
The legend himself.
What a man. What a mighty good
you
man.
might have heard of him. I hope you have. So Matt voices the director, and the director is kind of, again, visualized being this kind of penguin from Batman type character. He's an evil guy, but he's very kind of, small and seemingly doesn't really
Like, sort of physically not intimidating,
not at
but
all.
kind of mental. So he is quite scary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we got a lot of different inspiration.
I do think the curious thing about the characters and it being an audio game is you hear their voice, and obviously you can't see them, so you as the player get to kind of use your imagination as well to kind of picture what this character might look like in your mind as well, which I find.
Yeah, for sure.
The brain is the world's most powerful graphics.
There it is, the tagline.
Yeah, like it might not necessarily be what you guys picture the characters as.
But that's
the joy of it. Yeah, I mean, think about books, for example. You read a book, you get a bit of a description of a character, but it's not.
It's interpretive media,
of course, and that's great, and that's one of the joys of encouraging the player to kind of imagine themselves, visualize them.
Like if I use Harry Potter, for example, I am probably one of those people who actually did picture Hermione as a black person as opposed to someone who actually looked like Emma Watson. So like obviously there was no description of it being either way in the books, but that's just I imagine
it's interesting how, for sure, your different results and you get, it's interesting to see, and we're hoping to fully kind of employ that method, if you will. So
okay, well, you've said you used Unity. Why did you pick Unity over other forms of developmental software?
Well, a few reasons. So there are a couple of game engines out there just for audio game creation, but they tend to be not for explorative or 3D audio games. They tend to be for sort of 2D experiences. Some employ binaural still, but not in the same way. So that kind of led me to look at the more mainstream audio engines, and there are a whole bunch like RPG Maker, Game Maker Toolkit, Unreal Engine, Unity, etc. I kind of boiled it down because of the type of game we want it to be, to Unreal Engine and Unity. And Unreal Engine's excellent for creating a high level of graphical fidelity, despite not being a AAA studio. And so that obviously isn't the main focus of our game. and Unity has a great deal of both official and unofficial documentation online, a million tutorials, lots and lots of different methods of applying binaural audio. So you use Steam Audio, Resonance Audio by Google, Oculus's SDK, a whole bunch of different options for doing exactly what we wanted to do. And so Unity just kind of stood out as the best option of all available, really.
Yeah, they've all got their pros and cons. I looked into
Absolutely.
I looked into Unity and Unreal myself. I went with Unreal mostly because I can't code. So the
Right.
blueprint system and Unreal Engine is
Oh
what
yeah.
works for me. But yeah. But I did look into Unity and like they both
Yeah.
they both did what I need them to do, but yeah.
Mhm.
Okay,
Yeah. Well.
yeah, you go.
Oh, so I was just gonna say, having spent quite a lot of time in Unity now, as you can imagine, I have to say I think it's so wonderful that making games, creative projects generally, but games is so accessible thanks to the great tutorial content that's online now, all free. Unity is for free unless you're making over 100 grand from the game, which most startups aren't. Um, so 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 yeah, so I'd really encourage people, if you have an idea which you think is good, you can make it. It just takes time. And particularly with Unity and particularly with games, um, just go for it, because there'll be a means of creating what you want to make, and it's really rewarding as a process to do so.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I'm nowhere near done,
Just
and
gonna-
even I'm seeing the rewards from what I'm doing. Whether it's just, oh, I actually achieved something I didn't think I could do,
Yeah,
or
for sure. I was just getting by the way. Sorry, he's not going. He's not had enough.
Has being a game developer taught you anything new that you would not have otherwise known?
Oh yeah, I guess so. I mean, Harry's the lead game designer here. But I mean, in general, yeah. I think for myself, I've written scripts before, but it's quite different speaking to someone else as well, who's in the business with us. And we were talking about the difference in writing a script, for example, without without there being any visuals at all. And you have to think differently. For example, when visual cues that you see in films that can say a lot, whether it's a symbol, I don't know, on a wall or something like that, which obviously tells the player or the viewer, the audience, that this is happening. Don't have any of that. It's all audio cues and all dialogue. So it's changed the script for sure, and just video game scripts in general. Big difference between writing scripts for video games than writing scripts for film or TV or even theatre. So yeah.
And from my perspective, one, getting a lot more familiar with Unity and C#, that was obviously a big step. But two, really embracing the idea of player-led storytelling and interaction, as opposed to my previous experience, which is musical, where you have complete control over what the person experiences, sort of thing. So really embracing the idea of chaos due to the player's actions within a game world, within an interactive environment. That was really interesting.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So yeah.
Okay. Well, you kind of mentioned a couple of questions ago, but the indie game, like, they seem to be becoming a lot more popular lately. There's a lot of people delving into attempting to develop their own games, and a lot more interest in the gaming community in playing indie games. What are your thoughts on this? Like, do you have any theories as to why?
Well, I believe that indie games are a little bit, but more from a AAA games, kind of are a bit more of a slog a lot of the time. I think there's a lot of, and I don't mean to attack the big game companies here, but I think people are kind of getting used to these AAA titles as being kind of missold, over hyped, and I think there's a lot of disappointment surrounding that. And I think the indie games would be called an indie game now. Well, they're historically they were the first game. So I think there's kind of going back to the roots there. I think there's an element of that. I think there's an element of people now kind of want to, my friend, for example, was saying that he wants to just be able to pick up a game, a very simple, easy to play game that he doesn't have to think about loads for about 15, 20 minutes and then just put it back down again. And I think there's a tendency, okay, so Uncharted is obviously, it's a great game, a great series. If you haven't played it, definitely go for it. But it's it requires a lot of attention. It's not one that you can kind of play for 15 minutes and then stop again. So I guess indie games are a little bit easier on the brain.
I'd also say that there is that sort of mobile indie game pick up and play thing going on. But I think one, being an indie game company, you have a much lower overhead, which allows you to experiment more with gameplay mechanics, because you're not going to spend £10 million developing a game, and if it flops, that's the company dead. Sometimes for indie devs that is the case, but so that sort of encourages innovation. I think this and more interesting gameplay mechanics, which then, as there are so many game players now, they definitely go for those unique experiences, which is sort of what we're trying to go for. And also the sort of game as a concept of the medium, it's matured to the point, I think, where it's got a multitude of niches now, and it before you had a stereotype of gamers being white sort of teenagers who go to arcades and do whatever, and now there are games made for every sort of demographic of person, and that in itself encourages a much broader range of people to play it, and also encourages a much broader range of style of games to be on the market. So that's
Yeah, like you talked about the taking risks part. That's definitely my favorite thing about indie games, and like gravitating. Like you find a lot of interesting mechanics that you would not see in AAA games. And yeah, there's just a lot more interest. Plus, you can tell just the amount of love and all of that goes into making an indie game, because obviously when you've got a AAA title, you've got like a huge team working on one game. Like you might have one person just working on a single tree. And obviously a lot of love might have gone into that tree, but
absolutely
not the same amount of, whereas like if you've got the indie game, you've got either one person or you've got a very small team.
It's more personal, isn't it? I think generally.
Yeah.
And also it's sort of the idea of the one indie dev spoiling away in their room for 3 years to make their vision of a masterpiece. That's a very attractive notion. In the same way that sort of the bedroom recording artist in the music world, singer-songwriter, that's quite an appealing thing. This creative mastermind who's made their grand vision. That's quite a cool ideal, I think, as well.
Yeah, I'm not sure if you knocked the camera or something, but it's moved, so I can't see. Like Harry's completely cut off.
It's all right. No one's listening.
Okay, there we go. That's better.
Is that better? Okay, great.
Yeah, we can see you again.
Sorry about that.
Okay, if you could work for a big AAA game company, would you? And if you could choose which company, what would you choose?
Well, I mean, working for AAA would certainly be interesting, and probably pay better. Being said, for me personally, I've had a history of pursuing projects because I personally thought they were important, and because I was in love with it, and you lose a lot of that creative control or creative freedom through working for a big company. So whilst I might consider it, it's not something that appeals to me right now. I don't know why you.
I mean, yeah, I think there's certainly something refreshing about kind of, we talked about the freedom just now of it being kind of like in a smaller team as opposed to, you know, the restraints of being in a big dev company. That said, I guess the most relevant and most obvious one for me would really, yeah, you know, Last of Us 2, which I'm sure everyone's pretty hyped for. The kind of, and I think I think Naughty Dog kind of came in with this, you know, kind of fresh spin on stuff. It was so cinematic. Last of Us, it was so cinematic. And I personally, and I'm not saying that games, you know, didn't exist. I'm sure they did. That shared a similar sense of cinematography. But yeah, I think The Last of Us it blew me away. The cross between, you know, it's an interactive film, and I love the idea. So
Yeah, I haven't played that, but it is on my list
you
of
should
stuff.
play it for sure.
I think it's because I can't find it on PC. Is probably the only reason I haven't played it.
Yeah, you should. Well, if you ever get the chance, do. It's incredible. It's very good.
Are you a gamer yourself?
Yes. I guess ironically like first person shooters really. That's a boring answer, isn't it? I'm a huge fan of the Battlefield series. Jordan and I actually play that. Jordan and I actually play that quite a lot. And yeah, I don't know. Yeah, but Battlefield for sure is my kind of primary game. But then you've got other games like I was playing again, kind of similar along the line of story driven, more choice based than Last of Us. But Detroit Becoming Human, that's really cool. It's very good. And again, you have things like Walking Dead, which is an interactive TV series essentially. And I love those kind of games. The choice based narrative games are, I think, very, very, very interesting.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of choice-based narrative games myself.
Yeah, really fun. Really fun.
I think like the music in the games, you guys wrote all the music yourselves?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so to expand on that, yeah, as I said, we're all musicians, all written stuff in the past. So yeah, it was a natural decision to do all the music in house. We also have a lot of recording equipment, high quality recording equipment. So all the recording, all the mixing, all the mastering is done by us for the game. All bespoke for the game. Yeah, and creating it bespoke for the project really lets you capture the tone in a way that I think only you can when you make bespoke music for a game. Unless you do something like Hotline Miami and find an incredible soundtrack from game stuff. But yeah, so we do everything, record everything, mix it.
Yeah, well, I'm trying to word my question. How did you go about composing certain things for different places? I think that's where I'm going for. If you understand.
Yeah, for sure.
Sure.
I guess, I mean, a lot of it has to be relevant to the level. For example, in we have a sewer level. Again, a sewage level. That doesn't sound good, does it? So we have a sewer level, and in that level, obviously, the score has to be equally as haunting. Another level that we have is a desolate, desert level. Without too many spoilers, we've already mentioned this before. Then we have to have this kind of, relevant, lonely guitarist type feel. So it's all very thematic based on the individual kind of, themes found within each level.
We have a cathedral level, and so writing choir music, like dramatic haunting choir
Jordan
music.
did a real good job.
Yeah. You can hear some of it in the trailer, actually, in the binaural trailer, particularly the cathedral stuff.
Check it out.
There's also the main theme, which is dark and eccentric, are sort of our buzzwords for the sound design and for the audio generally. And so having I think because we're a small team, we're all working so closely. It's everyone sort of knows the appropriate tone we're going for because we're also engaged in the whole process of making the thing. So yeah.
Yeah, like there's nothing worse than going into a game and going into a level and the music not fitting the environment. It's just like
Yeah,
no
it just doesn't
mercy.
work, does it?
Like I have actually played a couple where I walked into like it would have been like the whole you'd go into a graveyard and the music was way upbeat and kind of happy and you're like, why am I happy to be in a graveyard? So it just wasn't working.
Yeah, it just doesn't work. Doesn't make sense.
I think this is the last question I have for you. So viewers, if you have any questions, feel free to start chucking them in chat.
Cool.
Other than obviously Pitch Black, is there anything else that you're currently working on or plan on working on in the future that you're willing to share with us?
Well, as regards future plans after Pitch Black, we're planning episodic releases. So every 4 to 6 months, a shorter but equally interesting game will be releasing to that's within the world of Dusklight, within the world of Pitch Black. So I suppose from that perspective, there's a lot more content coming. From a personal perspective, I'm in a couple of bands who are currently recording albums. You're working on
always working on music stuff, other things, small things, but as far as game development is concerned, this is our kind of this is our pride and joy. So we'll be working on sequels, as soon as we can, and keeping kind of the series going, the Dusklight series going.
You talked episodic. Are we talking like a DLC or a separate game in?
No, so it'll be a standalone episodic releases. So we're actually thinking episode 2, episode 3 will probably be a little bit creative with the naming. But yeah, so we've got lots of plans in store for the future.
Yeah, that definitely sounds very interesting. I'm going to give more chances for your questions. But this is normally the part of the talk show. I give you guys the opportunity to plug anything you want to plug. If you can plug your social media, I've plugged the Kickstarter again. Anything you want to plug, this is your opportunity to plug it.
Okay. Well, Kickstarter's the big boy. We've got as of 12 o'clock UK time, we'll have 7 days left. So a week to get the pledges in. The game is definitely going to happen, but our stretch goal is at £6,000, which is transferable saves, just to say again, between mobile and desktop. Other than that, we're on Twitter. That's probably our most active social, but we're on all the other ones as well. And that is at Dusklight, DUSKLIGHT Pro, PRO. We're also on Facebook, which is Pitch Black, a Dusklight story. Type us into Google, we'll come up everywhere. And we're also on Discord, which we're pretty active on. So join the Discord server, get involved.
I'm just trying to grab all those links.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. But yeah, just give us a Google. We're everywhere. It's cool.
Okay, so I'm going to put the this is the Twitter I'm posting in there. And you said Facebook? Okay, I'm not finding the Facebook by Googling.
Let me send you a link. I've just sent a link your way.
Cool.
Oh.
And that's the Facebook. So if any of you guys are interested in backing the pitch Kickstarter or even just sharing it to see if anyone you know might be interested in backing the Kickstarter, the links are there, as well as the Twitter and the Facebook for Pitch Black, A Dust Like Story, if you want to keep updated on all of the developments. I don't actually think we've got any viewer questions. So yeah, so I'm going to take a 10-minute break, and then I'm going to come back and I'm going to play the demo. You guys said you were going to stick around?
Yeah, we'll be watching you.
Yeah, it'll be interesting.
Yeah, so if anyone's got any questions while I'm playing, I'm pretty sure the guys will be more than happy to answer it in chat for you.
Yeah.
But anyway, I shall be back. Thank you guys for coming on the show, and I will be back shortly.
Yeah, no, thank you very much.
Thanks very much.
Thanks.